You can turn on English subtitles if you can't understand me very well. This is a guide on how to use elephants during Nodewar and Siege. The first thing that you need to know is that by coming to any guild stable keepers, you are able to, at any point, as long as you have permissions in your guild, take out elephants from your guild and practice with them as much as you want. You can have up to 3 elephants, so up to 3 people can practice simultaneously. And I recommend that at least everyone in the utility part of your guild knows how to drive one. The first thing that you need to know about elephant is how to get it out during a Nodewar. That is done through the elephant nursery. The elephant nursery is a building that is consistent across all Nodewars and Siege. During Nodewar, you can have up to 1 elephant nursery. During Siege, you can have up to 3. And each of them is able to produce 1 elephant. The buildings take 5 minutes to be ready and to set up an elephant to be used. And they reset upon the elephant dying. It is possible to interact with the building after the elephant has been taken out and is on the field, but this will not decrease the amount of time that it will need for it to be ready again. It is possible to whistle elephants, just like any other mount in the game, but it is done from a separate menu. The menu can be accessed on this icon here. This is the guild list mount, or the guild mount list, excuse me. And by clicking the name of the elephant, we can whistle it to our position. Bear in mind, this will not teleport the elephant if it's far away. It works like a normal whistle on a horse without the pearl item that allows it to be teleported to you. So if I click cinch here, the elephant begins walking to me. It is important to know that only the alliance lead can whistle elephants in an alliance during Nodewar. So for example, if you have multiple guilds in your alliance, you can't really see very well here, but we have 3 guilds in this alliance. Only the leading guild is able to whistle elephants during Nodewar, because these elephants are always the elephants of the leading guild. Even if the other 2 guilds, or 3 or whatever, have elephants, those elephants are not the ones being used during Nodewar. So only the leading guild can effectively whistle elephants, and typically only the leading guild will be employing elephant riders during Nodewars and Sieges. Although it is possible for other alliance members that are not from the main guild to ride elephants, they have limited ability to use them, as they can also not recall elephants, as we will see later, which is a very important mechanic. About movement, the first thing that you need to know is how to mount the elephant. There are 2 possibilities and only one of them is right. If you come over to basically anywhere around the elephant that is not directly in front of it, and you try to mount it, you will mount on the back, where you can throw spears at people. This can be mildly effective in tier 1 Nodewars, but it is basically completely useless under any other circumstance. The only other thing you need to know about being up here is that you are invulnerable. You will not take any damage, only the elephant will take damage. And up to 2 people can be riding the elephant in this position, one on the left side and one on the right side. In order to mount an elephant and use it, you will need to come to the front of it and press R in order to mount it, just like before. And now we are driving the elephant. The movement is very simple. You can use W, A, S, and D to move it around. As you can see, this is extremely slow. It does not pick up any kind of speed. So what we do in order to move around as elephant riders is we press Q, and that begins a charge. Any player that runs into an elephant that is charging will be CC'd, regardless of their protection state, forward guard or SA. The only thing that can protect you from an elephant charge is iframe. The range is surprisingly long. As you can see in front of me, there is a cloud. That's basically the full range of the charge. And as you can see as well, it covers essentially the body of the elephant as well as a good chunk of terrain in front of it. The elephant has one other ability that is very useful, which is the stomp. It can be activated with the F key. It is possible to mouse move the stomp. In order to mouse move, you will need to come over to settings, look for mouse, and enable mouse to move. If you have this option enabled, by default you can press Control and your cursor will come up, and then you can click on the ground, and during a stomp that will make you able to instantly spin around. This can also be used in other forms of PvP with your class, depending on the different abilities that you have. It's possible to cancel the stomps that the elephant does through two ways, and this is very important, and I will illustrate why. I'm going to press Q, and then I'm going to hold F to try to stomp as soon as I can. So this is without cancels, so to speak. I tap Q in order to begin charging. As you will see, I have, so to speak, a long cooldown in which I cannot do anything else other than charge. Even if I can somewhat spin around on the charge and somewhat direct it, I am locked into moving forward, essentially. Which is also important to know, because if you want to move from here to that little tree, and there are enemies or traps in that area, or behind the fence, so to speak, I would most definitely run into a trap because I would be too close, so I would not want to charge that way. Regardless, if I press Q and I hold F, you will see that I am not able to enter the stomp animation even after the charge ends. I need to be at a complete standstill in order to be able to use a stomp. Incoming the two different cancels that you can use in order to get rid of that problem. I'm going to press Q, and then I'm going to hold T and F. T is the hotkey that is default for me in order to begin autopathing. It might be different for you. So I'm going to press Q, and F and T, and you're going to see that as soon as the charge ends, I immediately stomp. There's one other way to do this, and it is by holding S and D or S and A as I am charging. This will spin me around, but it will also allow me to immediately go into the stomp animation without having to wait. So I'm going to tap Q, hold S, D, and F. As you see, I'm spinning, turning around, and then immediately I go into the stomp. There is no walking idle animation. It completely cancels and removes it, which is very, very useful. Generally speaking, when you're moving with your elephant, you are going to want open areas and choke points. This has some counterplay, as we will see later, in the different dangers that you're going to be facing as an elephant rider. But you will not be able to overcome certain obstacles on your way. So for example, this fence I cannot jump over. Never mind, I can. But there will be fences, or for example this rock, where I cannot jump over. This can be used very effectively when you're an elephant rider, because you are still CCing in a very wide area of effect. So that would mean if there was a cannon, for example, or enemies placed on top of this rock, and I am charging against it, even though I'm not moving forward, all of them are CC'd. This can also be used to dismount cannons, and it can be used to damage other elephants from the enemy very heavily. In general, when you run into an enemy elephant, you will want to charge into it if your objective is to try and kill it, or you will want to charge away from it so that it doesn't kill you instead. Stomping does not do any damage to enemy elephants. As you can see, I'm stuck on the fence. I don't know where I was able to get over it before. But typically, you will be able to jump over some obstacles and not some over others. As you can see, I'm able to jump over those rocks, but on the fence I get stuck. It is somewhat random, and it takes experience to be able to know what obstacles you can get over with, which is why I heavily recommend that you practice with your elephant on some downtime, especially before Nodewars or sieges. I heavily recommend that you have some practice time. The dangers that you're going to face as an elephant rider are primarily traps and Nodewar and siege structures. Elephant traps are slightly different from normal traps in that they only affect elephants, which means that another player cannot run over it in order to trigger it and prevent it from hitting you instead. But there is some counterplay to them. It is possible to craft quick flares. This item here. You can do it from different workshops. The one that I personally use is in Heidel 1.4. If you level it up all the way to level 3, you will be able to craft quick flares here. These flares pop a lot faster than the flares that you can obtain from the loyalty shop, and they will reveal any traps in the area. When a trap is revealed, it is possible to kill it with skills from players, And so what this means is trap counterplay during Nodewar is up to your teammates to do. This should be your call in voice chat. You should ask your teammates if you're in a utility team or your shot caller in main raid to make sure that main raid or your team are popping quick flares as you're charging in, so that they can kill the traps and you are not trapped when you run in. If you run into an elephant trap, you will be immediately dismounted from the elephant and the elephant will be stunned for some time. If this does happen, you have two options, and they depend on whether you're alive or not. If you're alive, you can simply whistle the elephant. Whistling the elephant will immediately end the stun effect on the elephant and you will be able to instantly remount it. You will not be able to remount if you do not whistle the elephant, neither will anyone from your guild. The second option is if you're dead, you can call for your teammates or main raid or what have you to immediately try and whistle the elephant, mount it, and get it out. There is technically a third option that I will get into tips and tricks towards the end of the video. That is also very, very helpful, but requires a lot of coordination and will generally only be done by highly competitive guilds that probably don't need to watch this guide. The other danger that you're going to run into as an elephant rider, obviously besides getting run down by an entire enemy main raid that just kills your elephant outright, is Nodewar structures, particularly defense structures, those being flame towers and hawachas. Flame towers specifically, especially in their upgraded version in some Nodewar caps and sieges, are very, very powerful and will essentially delete your elephant, so you need to stay very far away from it. Hawacha also does a lot of damage to elephant, but it does damage in bursts and will typically not end up killing you unless you are standing still in a position where the Hawacha is constantly hitting, for example, one of your flags or that are very close to the enemy base, or defending some kind of regroup where Hawacha is hitting. Usually you will not have much trouble with those, but it is worth knowing that if it does connect with you, even though it's very dodgeable, it will do a very substantial amount of damage. As for the behavior that you should have during node wars and sieges, it is slightly different. As I mentioned before, the main dangers that come with elephant are offensive dangers when you're going on the offense. Elephant is very powerful defensively because if you're in an area that you know is defended and does not have any traps or anything like that, you are basically unstoppable. Enemy main raid will have to focus you for quite a long time in order to be able to kill you, and you will be doing a lot of CCs everywhere. My recommendation is that you permanently hold F when you're not moving, like this, and of course you can mouse move in order to redirect your AoE attacks. With the stomps, the main hitbox, the main area that you're going to be CCing enemies in, is in front of you wherever you're landing. This area can be moved with mouse move. So for example, here I CC'd in this area, even though I was facing this way. And my advice is that, yes, you permanently hold F when you are not doing anything else on your elephant, or that you're charging up against an obstacle that is able to keep you in place, for example this fence here. Both of these are valid. I usually recommend the stomp, because if you try to move while you're charging, because you need to reposition, you might find that you end up going where you don't want to go, like this way, for example, if I wanted to spin around, right? So I heavily recommend that you just permanently hold F when you're waiting. I also recommend, if you are on an offensive effort with your teammates, for example, if you are pushing a base and you're waiting outside because you don't want to run into flame tower range, that you permanently ping where you are, like this. You can assign a hotkey on the settings for your ping. I also recommend that you use a color that will be assigned to you by the main raid shot caller typically. In my case, I use yellow. And I will just be permanently pinging while stomping, so that main raid knows to regroup on me if they finish their push or they need some safety. This is particularly useful in tier 1 node wars, where your main raid is going to be pushing the neutral stick constantly and then trying to regroup whenever the enemy respawns. But it is useful in all scenarios nonetheless, siege, node wars, whatever. So yes, during node wars you are basically going to be a constant regroup point for your allies. You're going to be constantly pinging, constantly stomping, sometimes charging. You don't want to be the one engaging. If you need to move to engage something, then you should ask your teammates to do flares for you so that you don't get trapped. And the last thing you need to know is that Elephant does a lot of damage to flags, which you can get stuck up against by pressing and holding Q. It is a bit finicky because the hitbox is relatively small, but it is possible to do this exact same thing up against the flag and constantly charge it, seeing enemies and doing a lot of damage to it. It is possible to do the exact same thing with a stick. The Elephant will do tons and tons of damage to enemy sticks up to the stick being 50% HP. In fact, Elephant is the quickest way to put an enemy stick on 50% HP. Once the stick reaches 50%, you will not do any damage to it anymore. The same thing happens with cannons and other non-player interactions, if that makes sense. During Siege, your behavior changes a lot. During Siege, you need to be very, very aggressive, which means that your platoon or your team, whatever you have, is gonna need to pop a lot of quick flares very, very quickly. The reason for this is that Elephant does tons of damage to the walls during Siege, and it can open holes very, very quickly, much more so than main raid can with axes, horses, or just normal skills. Typically, you will want to have all 3 elephants, or at least 2 of them, charging the same fenced area. So let's assume, for example, that this area here is the enemy wall. You will need to locate, or your team for you, areas of the wall that are not covered by flame towers. The reason being, flame towers during Siege can bypass walls like these, and the walls in Siege. So it can hit through them, and it will kill you very quickly. You need to find sections of the wall that don't have a flame tower directly behind it, or you just need to assume that your elephant will die and just try to get as much damage done on whatever spot you were told to charge as possible. Typically, the main raid shot caller or you will decide where you need to charge, so just pay attention to that. Usually during Siege, you are going to always be moving with main raid, unless you are assigned to defend your cannons or to push an enemy flag or something like that, which will always be done with other people regardless. And that's pretty much everything that you should know about the behavior that you should have during Nodewars. Once the holes are open in the enemy base during Siege, you can look to open more holes, or you can just play defensive, stomping on the hole to prevent it from rebuilding. If there is a hole directly in front of me here, then you will want to stand on the side here, like so. Stomping on the side, imagine that the enemy is trying to push out this way. I will just permanently charge on the side so they cannot hit me from the outside. And if they come out, I will CC them with a stomp. Now on to some tips and tricks that you can do on your elephant. The first thing that you need to know is that it's possible to recall the elephant during Nodewars and Sieges. So if your elephant is really far away from where you need it to be, or it's really, really low HP and you don't want to use it anymore, you can see it on the map here with an icon. It's possible to click it, and then it is possible to essentially kill the elephant yourself, suicide it if that makes sense, in order to remove it. If you do it this way in Siege, and I believe also in Nodewar, although I'm not entirely sure about this, the elephant will recover all of its HP and stamina, and it will be faster or instantaneously available to be taken out of the nursery. I am not entirely sure on how this works because I am not a main elephant rider, but I do know that it works. So if possible, when your elephant is very, very low, or it runs out of stamina, as we will see in a moment, you want to send it back home, essentially, and immediately pop it out again of the nursery fully healed. There is a problem with this, and it is that only the main guild in the alliance is capable of doing this. Usually what will happen is either you will recall your own elephant, assuming you are from the main guild, or someone from defense from your alliance that is also in the main guild will recall it for you, like so, doing the same thing that I just did. They will press yes, and the elephant will be beamed back home, and it will be able to be taken out of the nursery again, basically fully healed. I am not entirely sure on how this mechanic works because I have never done it, as I am Flex lead, not elephant rider. Another tip that you can know, and that you should definitely try and practice a bit, even if it's very difficult to do, is 360-degree stomps. So as you have seen, when I stomp, the hitbox is in front of myself, but if I mouse move, I can direct it to be anywhere else. It is possible, if you mouse move at the perfect frame during the stomp, to extend the area that the stomp CCs in. So if I do it at the very last second, I messed it up there, it is possible to make the stomp cover a much wider area, which is very, very powerful, but it's also very, very finicky. Generally speaking, however, because of how mouse move works, you will find a lot more success. If you mouse move at the last second, you will have a lot more desync. If I mouse move like this so early, the enemy will be able to see my elephant spinning and doing the stomp in a different direction. But if I do it last second, from their perspective, it will be very hard to tell where the elephant is stomping and what it is doing, and you will probably find a lot more success mouse moving last second. The last thing that you need to know is that riding elephant is a very important job for your guild, and it is a very finicky thing to do. You might run into issues that are very annoying to deal with, and you might not be rewarded for your behavior during node wars and sieges, for the effort that you put into doing things. And that's okay, because most people don't know how to do elephant, and there is a huge gap between people who are experienced and people who are not, let alone people who have no idea how it works. One thing that is worth mentioning, for example, is that if you fall from small ledges, it is possible to lose huge chunks of HP for no apparent reason, and that can be very, very frustrating. So take it slow with the elephant, practice things, and just try to enjoy it. It is a very powerful tool. It can be very, very fun to use, but also a lot more challenging than it might appear. The last stat that you need to take care of is the stamina bar here. As you can see, it has depleted very slightly since I started this tutorial. The stamina bar is essentially a second HP bar. If it depletes, you're done. You need to recall your elephant, suicide it, what have you. Once the stamina reaches 0, you can no longer charge, you can no longer stomp, and you are essentially useless. In most scenarios, your HP will deplete much faster than the stamina, because the stamina is actually very generous, but it can be quite annoying. One last side note, even though I wasn't going to talk about how you can obtain elephant and stuff. Elephant has gear. Ideally, you want blue gear, as upgraded as possible. It helps significantly with the performance of your elephant. It will gain a lot higher stats, particularly in capped. It is somewhat less relevant, but in uncapped, Node Wars and Siege, it is a very significant difference that you're going to find if you have good gear on your elephant. And yeah, that has been it. I believe I've covered all the topics that I wanted to cover. Yes. And so hopefully this guide helps you. I do not believe that there is any other guide on YouTube currently, or any public guide anyway, that covers all the topics that I have described here. And hopefully, even if you're not an elephant rider, you can show it to people who are looking to contribute to your guild through utility, and in this case specifically elephant riding. Thank you for watching, and I hope it helps. See you.